mitigation series. In the conversation of conservation, we touch on 3 mitigators, and food systems, energy transitions, and circular economies are the mitigation side. And now we're going to be getting into some of the climate adaptation, some of the climate action, digital innovation, some of the things that are currently being done. And I'm very honored to have Eusebio Scornavacca? Scornavacca. The Scornavacca pizza. Okay, is a professor and interim director at the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, SFIS, and here at the College of Global Futures here at ASU. In addition to his role at SFIS, he is the co-director of ASU's Science and Technology Center for Sustainability Innovation, Impact Arizona Initiative. He also holds the position of Professor of Global Digital Innovation at the Thunderbird School of Global Management, and is a Senior Global Future Scientist at ASU's Julie and Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. There's a lot of globals in there. Before his tenure at ASU, Scornavacca held the prestigious Parsons Professorship in Digital Innovation and served as the Director of the Center for Digital Communication, Commerce, and Culture at the University of Baltimore. Eusebio is a global scholar fostering extensive research collaborations across 6 continents. His academic journey has led him to visiting professorships in countries like Japan, China, Egypt, Italy, France, Finland, Spain, New Zealand, the list keeps going, Morocco, and Brazil. His research interests span a broad spectrum encompassing areas such as disruptive digital innovation, high-impact innovation, innovation policy, digital entrepreneurship, ICT for development, digital sustainability, and climate tech. Over the past 2 decades, he has conducted research employing both qualitative and quantitative methodologies, contributing insights to various industries, including projects sponsored by the private sector. Furthermore, Scornavacca has considerable experience in developing multinational, cross-disciplinary learning initiatives. Scornavacca's research has been published in leading academic journals. His commitment to advancing knowledge in his field is further evident through his editorial roles and contributions to leading conferences. He also speaks a multitude of languages.
I was hungry.
He's very hungry. So is that 7 languages
7
you said?
Before, yeah.
Okay, let me cue you up here. And we'll give you the floor to take us into our 4th track.
All right, let's see if this works. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to share. Okay, so we're good. So thank you for the introduction. I promised that I thought it would be edited to something short. As you know, my work is basically on digital innovation, right? And for many years, I worked on areas like mobile technologies and development of ecosystems. And at one point, I saw the light and I said, how can I use technology to do well, but to do good at the same time? So one of the things I will talk about is actually how we can bring digital innovation to climate action. To be able to do this, we have to start thinking how we change the mindset from output to outcome, right? When and I was trained as an engineer and then later as a business. Most of my career was actually in business schools. And I figured out that one thing was interesting is that we're always trained about performance gains. How can we make things cheaper, faster, better, right? And all about efficiency, all about improving performance. But hardly ever we think about the relationship of how this gain to performance, how innovation can actually drive social and environmental outcomes. What is the relation of that innovation that is actually pushing better performance, and how does it actually affect society, humanity, and the planet? So why is it important for us to go beyond performance gains? Well, if we want to really to be able to globally co-design a more equitable and sustainable future, we have to think about the role of innovation, how it can actually provide positive socioeconomic and environmental outcomes? How can we minimize the unintended outcomes of innovation and maximize the good stuff, right? So when you think about, one thing is important is that we need to kind of stop for a second and think about what is this social-technical ecosystem. And my apologies for natural scientists, yes, we in technology, we kidnap the word ecosystem, right? So, and I know it may sound, hurt your ears, but sorry, we use that word. So the first thing you have to think about is this emergency of the digital ecosystem. What you have here is a number of different technologies that, the internet, wireless, communications, miniaturizations, convergency, cost effectiveness, that actually, slowly starting to creep and to converge. For those that are old enough to remember, if you think about, and I'll say, Ryan, can you help me here? Do you remember Radio Shack back in the 90s? Right? Everything they could buy here is actually here. Your camcorder is here, your VCR is here, your Walkman is here, your TV is here, your fax machine is here, your Commodore 64 computer is here, right? So think about the number of technologies, and your, of course, AT&T brick is also here. Right? So one thing is interesting to think about is the number of different technologies that actually converged and actually became more and more ubiquitous. So to think about this, we actually start to think about space, time, and interaction. If you think back in the day, right, if I wanted to do anything on a computer, I have to be at my desk. So when you see on the first one, what I call the stationary, and you see that red line is my movement in time and space, only when I was at my desk, I could send an email to say, hey, what time are we meeting? Then later, I got an American Airlines or a Prodigy Packard Bell 386, for those techies in the house, with a 14 kbps modem that sounded like a screaming cat, right? To have an idea for the young folks here, to get one picture downloaded would take about half hour, and the picture wasn't even good, right? So what happened was I could actually access my email, for example, at internet kiosks, at my computer at home, right? But also at work. So what you start to see is that, the maroon area actually expanding. And then I got my first BlackBerry or Nokia communicator or any type of mobile device. In my case, I think the first, I had an NTT Docomo when I was living in Japan, that actually, with a FOMA, with iMode, Satoshi should remember that one, right? That actually was the first device that actually had email capability. And what you see here is actually that expansion of where, when, and how we interact with technology, or with information technology. Why that's important? Because what it does, that all these different technologies, they start to create this ubiquitous ecosystem that the pervasive nature of it allows us to have, positive and negative effects of almost a perpetual connectivity. And what it does, it transforms many aspects of human activity by enhancing our ability to have the supported technology, but also, if you think about whatever you have smart something is actually a cyber-physical system. Imagine you have a cup, now we've got a smart cup. That cup has a sensor in it. That sensor is connected. That sensor tells, the temperature of water, the pH, whatever it is, right? So we start to see objects and people and other things starting to get more and more connected. So really what we have is a digital physical, or what we call a cyber-physical world, where the physical world and the digital world interacts all the time. All of you that had a phone in your pocket, and you actually walked here, took a car, a bicycle, you created actually a digital twin of your movement, of what kind of mode of transportation. This is data. So space, time, and actors and artifacts are constantly connected. And as those that remember the band The Police, every breath you take, every move you make, every heart you break, I think was next one, right? I'll be watching you, which means if you're connected to those devices, our actions and interactions are computed. Now, when you think about the technological characteristics and how it creates value, what you really have are technologies that are cyber-physical, which means they can be digital. Imagine you're going to the airport. you could have your ticket on this device or a printed ticket. So you start to see the physical aspect more and more mixed with the digital aspect. It is more and more embedded, right? You see companies now, even shoes now with sensors on it. It's connected, right? Your fridge now, they're selling fridges that are connected. You're seeing more and more things that are connected and smart because it's computed. Now, what is interesting here is that it creates value by, one, digitalizing and decoupling. For example, if you think about, when I was a teenager, I wanted to buy a song. I had to buy a piece of hardware. Whether it was a long play, I'm not that old, so maybe a CD, right? I had to buy, or a cassette tape, right? I had to buy a piece of hardware. Now you don't, because we decouple the physical element to the digital element. It's ubiquitous, right? You see more and more this pervasiveness and embedded. But what is interesting here is the ability of the network effect and generativity. We connect with things and people and resources in a way that we never thought about. Like for me to do a call today with somebody in Phoenix or somebody in Dubai, the cost, the challenge is exactly the same. So you start to see this unanticipated innovation by a much more complex ecosystem of connecting different things. Now, hold on. So if you think about, you have this ecosystem that has on its bottom an infrastructure that vendors will talk about cloud, AI, 5G, quantum computing. To me, it's storage, processing, and transmission. That infrastructure allows us to have devices and things, right? Which is your media devices, your watch, your phone, your TV, your fridge, and objects that are connected. This layer, what I call the material artifacts, allows you to have this digital enablers. That is, we talked about digitalization, ubiquity, generativity, but the technology by itself doesn't create value. What you need here is actually to couple the technology with actually a business process and features that is enhanced by the technology, that is clear, supports a business model, and actually creates value. Otherwise, you have what we call dormant technology. You need that technology to be actualized into value. So you see why I'm talking about abstract artifacts, which is your business model, your value capture model, and your material artifacts, which is your technological infrastructure. Now that we understand a bit the digital ecosystem and how we create value, let's have a look at digital innovation for climate action. What is interesting is that everybody here, and I think you probably, you're already a day and a half on this, you heard that I think we should do something about carbon and the climate, right? And there is ways we can work on this, public policy, technological innovation, entrepreneurial action, that allows coming to this new area called digital climate tech. Last year in the United States was around $80 billion invested into digital climate tech. When you compare to education, for example, the EduTech, it was $20 billion just in venture capital. So what you're looking at here is those initiatives or those ventures that allows us to think about how technology can support, this fight for mitigate the effects of global warming. So the gap is huge that exists between areas like entrepreneurship, sustainability, and digital innovation. What happens is each of those fields not necessarily talk to each other. And what we need to start doing is to say how we get sustainability people talk to innovation people and talk to entrepreneurs. And that's what we're doing at the College of Global Futures. That's why we have a School of Sustainability, a School for the Future of Innovation in Society, right? We have complex adaptive systems. So that's why this place, in my humble opinion, is so cool. I get excited because I talk to people, right, of different fields and I can see the application. Right, back in my days of business school, I would get excited when an accountant would knock on my door and say, "Can I talk to you? There is this new AI thing." Right now, I talk to people that are doing oceans, they're doing, research into the biosphere. It's fantastic. Now, how we translate this ecosystem into climate action? Well, we have the physical world and we have the digital world. we can basically use technology to observe, understand, act, and transform. Remember, every breath you take, every move you make, there you go. So what are we looking here? There are key problems that we need to think about that information technology or digital innovations can actually address. Things of knowing, evaluating, communicating, coordinating, creating trust, access, reach. And all those key problems, you can really boil them down. We can filter them to actually understanding and engaging. This understanding and engagement needs to result in essential outcomes. Either we're going to cut emissions or we need to drive to negative emissions. So what are you seeing here? Remember how we started talking to go beyond performance? So that's what we're doing. When you think about the digital venture, is the one seeking performance, where the abstract material, the technology bit, the material artifact, which is the technology bit, and the abstract artifact, which is the business, the process, the value capture, combine those two. But this exists into a social technical ecosystem or a social technical world where there is regulation, there is infrastructure, there is societal values. And you cannot put these two things in isolation. And this society and the venture exists inside a planet and a natural ecosystem. So we start to look at the relationship of those things. Now, put it all together, right? Look at this. We started with the voids. What do we need to do? Do we need to understand? Do we need to engage? Do we need to do both? That informed the creation of the opportunity. Okay, what technologies do we need to develop? What sort of processes and capture and business models we need to do? These two things together, the interplay of those two, creates or enables a value proposition. And that value proposition facilitates the actual outcomes. Looks very abstract. So let's look more specifically into a couple case studies here. One is Dynahex, which is a company that basically monitors and look at energy consumption. So this is more on the B2B market, right? That you're looking at government, you're looking at universities, you're looking at large-scale organizations that they're looking how can you drive decisions in terms of better optimize their financial returns into energy. This is the important thing here, guys. We need to start thinking not a green premium, but green discount. The moment that I'm talking to a company and there is a CFO in the room, a chief financial officer, if I talk about green premium, I see the phone getting out of the pocket. The moment that I say green discount, guess what happens, right? I get their attention. So we need to start thinking of that. How do we advance innovation that we move from green premium to green discount? So what they do there, they start with a number of technologies using AI that actually, how companies actually, they want to understand how can I do this? What is my consumption? What is my footprint? So they have a service that they call decarbonization as a service that actually allows them to combine this. But there is also a business model there. How do they charge for it? How do they make it accessible to it? Right? That actually comes to the company and say, okay, to the client and say, here is your energy, here is things you can do that actually can lower your energy costs and then, be close to be certified as neutral. Now, another company that works more, again, on the B2B is Carbon Click. This one is in New Zealand. What they do is very interesting. You go there, especially they target more SMEs and even individual customers. So you want to be carbon neutral. What they do, they create an estimation. So you say, hey, I'm in an IT shop with 50 people. They say, okay, IT shop, 50 people. So what they do from there, they create an estimation that says, okay, your business produces about 102 tons a year. We'll talk a little bit about these estimations, which a lot of people call measurements, and that's a big issue. But then they offer different packages that you can either offset 75%, 100%, 125. So what they are doing is those packages, they are actually doing the two things we talked about, understanding and engaging. Understanding is estimating what's basically your the amount of CO2 that you're producing, and engaging there, connecting you to actually different businesses that are providing offsetting services. Now, you choose, for example, once you choose what you want to do, you can actually choose different projects. In this case, is a reforestation in New Zealand. And funny enough, what do you think sells more? A nice picture of this green New Zealand with forest, right? Or actually showing a piece of concrete with carbon injected there. Even though the piece of concrete is way more, if you think about the ability, forests catch fire, right? There is different elements of the resilience of that. But it's very interesting that there's also a very strong consumer element of how people identify as green action. Now, going again, you get exactly the same thing. Organizations trying to identify their emission sources, they're trying to action on that. They offer the platform that creates the estimation based on the type of business that you do. They have a business value capturing model there that allows them to offset the emissions and then show that you do. But there is a little catch here. All this looks fantastic, and that's the catch. We need to start thinking about how we create trust and we compare apples with apples. The two important things here are the level of insight, how much you are actually creating reliable, consistent measurements versus guesstimates. And how much of actionability do you have? So how much you can translate that insight into action. Now, if you have a lot of insight, I have the best model in the world, but no one is actually engaging into that, what happens? You basically have strained knowledge. So basically, nothing happens, right? I know a lot, but it doesn't turn into action. Now, the most dangerous one is actually number 3. Is the moment that you start to do a race for the bottom. I go to company A, go to George there. Hey, George, can you estimate my footprint? And you say 70 tons. All right. Ryan says 100. How much is to offset? You say, $50,000. Ryan comes here and says, well, it's $80,000. What do you give me? I'll give you a digital badge that you're carbon neutral. How about you? I'll give you a digital badge that you're carbon neutral. Yeah, let's do it, right? So what you've seen here is the issue, unless, this is right now the Wild West in my opinion, unless we start to have more reliable, right, trust and standards and actually being able to compare, what you may do is actually be there, what I call the greenwashing zone, right? Because people will be happy to display, the badge that they got, but actually how effective it is questionable. So we need to look very seriously as an industry around climate tech in a way that actually creates trust that the shareholder or the consumer, or when you look at regulation, very different US mechanism versus the European mechanism, in terms of how regulation plays a role and who regulates and so forth, you start to see that a race for the bottom. So to wrap up, and I'm actually proud of my timing, it's really important that we understand the opportunity that exists in front of us to really leverage this pervasive digital ecosystem that we have in front of us. But we need to start shifting our view from what I call myopic short-term performance gains and really seeing how can we use this to redefine our idea of value, especially for humanity and the planet. So it's not that one is in the cost of the other, but how can we do well and do good at the same time? And rather than radically embracing or rejecting or opposing, we need to really think of novel, holistic approaches that really maximize the contributions of digital innovations and other types of innovations to economic, social, and environmental outcomes. And that's it. Thank you. Do you want a question? You're the boss.
Well, yeah, let's open it up. Are there any questions? No, that was a big topic. Exciting that we're going to get into the panel here, but Here's a question back here.
Thank you very much for your time and an engaging presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I was saying to Jason at the lunch break, how impressed I am at the intergenerational process that's taken place in this room. From inviting high school students to including his friends' younger adversaries, so to speak. And where your realm, I think, links to this carbon is maybe in the conversation, and maybe we can get your opinion on the problems around e-waste. The platforms that these artifacts sit on, and maybe what those problems are facing and challenges you see from your perspective as a creator of the digital, and how you think that's going to affect e-waste, and maybe give us an idea of what the ideal e-waste future might look like in your perspective.
So I think it's a very good question. So there's different ways we can look at this, right? The moment that you're creating more and more and more technologies, right, and those technologies becomes more and more consumables that people, if I ask here, and I want a bit of honesty here, how many of you have old devices? Either here in Maryland, I would say basement, but here in Arizona, we don't have basements, right? So how many of you have old devices in your garage or throwing in a drawer somewhere? There you go, right? So we have this issue in terms of how technology is designed and how there are incentives to actually replace. One of the things that I've seen that I think is really cool is actually starts from the design to actually having more sustainable types of, devices that you can upgrade, you can do different things, but also circular systems that you coordinate the use of those resources. One of the things I also have seen that I think is really cool is actually companies that instead of doing e-waste management, they really do what I call information management. How cool is that? You take a device, the device gets into the company, they actually look at the serial number and the model and so forth. It actually lists all the components that device has and how those components can be allocated and recycled, or even the materials on that. So you can start looking for, also use this type of technology, right, to actually more sustainable ways to manage and recycle and so forth. Again, it's a problem of knowing, understanding, and engaging, right? If you actually create the right incentives to actually, to recycle, if you create incentives to actually to become more circular, there you go. But if the incentive is upgrade to the iPhone 15 for free, right? I'll be honest, I have a 14, I have no need for the 15, right? I could have my 12 here, right? Just because my one broke but again, we also need to think of different aspects, right? So there are a number of things. The other element is pretty big. There's way more than on the handset. Is the energy consumption of data centers and so forth. That needs to be really thought about how the energy is actually produced, consumed. You can also create as virtual power plants into some of those types. So there is a number of things that needs to be also thought of in terms of the ecosystem. But a big part of my argument is not necessarily increasing the ecosystem, which is going to happen anyways, right? But it's actually thinking of this ecosystem, how it can be further developed in a way more sustainable. And again, it's using the current capabilities that's already there, right? About 20 years ago, I did a system in my classes back in New Zealand that was called Text to Learn. The idea was using Nokia phones to interact with 600 students at the same time. And my assumption was very simple. I had about 1.3 phones per student in the class. So better use that ecosystem to create an interactive system. So exactly the same idea.
I had another question that's related. First of all, thank you for presenting.
My pleasure.
It's a super timely and interesting topic, one that I think needs to be discussed even more. So we talked about the tangible physical waste from e-waste, right?
Yeah.
And that sparked another question of mine about data and data storage. And especially here in the Valley, there's a lot of expansion of the technology, infrastructure, and data storage, which, as you probably know, is uses a lot of resources like water and energy, which can be scarce in an arid region. So I'm wondering how we can sustain that economic development that's happening from the technology industry while also sustaining vital resources.
So I think fantastic question, right? I think one of the elements here is when you start to look at the type of resources that we have and how we manage them. So to me, energy and connectivity, right, and water are actually, basic infrastructure. If you think about in any development plan, right, you don't see people saying, well, we're going to put energy and water, and data, who cares, right? When you think about data access and becomes more and more part of the infrastructure, framing of any place. So if we look at this and we don't do exactly that, we look at how this can be actually done in a sustainable manner, planned, and actually think about how we're going to source energy, where this energy is going to be coming from, how this energy is going to be used. For example, there's some companies, they're doing something really interesting. They actually, because they buy so much energy and there is actually some energy that is not consumed, they pass that to local communities, especially to schools and other things like that. Right, Iron Mountain, for example, is a company that does some things like that, and we're engaged with them on this. So there is different ways of thinking, but again, you need to think as an ecosystem, right? The moment, so I think your point is an important conversation, and I think it is for two things. One, you cannot have this conversation into silence. The moment that you have the energy people, the energy justice people, then the technology people, then the business people, everyone talking on their own echo chamber, guess what? We don't really get an answer here. So I think the answer starts by getting different stakeholders at the table and actually thinking how we maximize the benefits of this technological ecosystem and we minimize the unintended outcomes, right, or minimize the negative effects. And that's the trade-off that exists, right? You cannot say that there's only good things or bad things, right? Every type of innovation brings a number of benefits, but at the same time brings a bunch of negative outcomes. So thinking through and thinking responsibly, right? And that's a little bit of my merchandise time. So that's what we do at the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, right? Is actually doing exactly that. Is thinking about how can we make the future for everyone? How can we make the future more just, more equitable, more sustainable, right? Trying to balance that issue of how innovation can actually be a driver of economic development, can be a driver of prosperity, can be a driver of many good things, but at the same time can be a driver of inequalities, can be a driver of deterioration of the natural ecosystem. You need to balance those things, going beyond performance and thinking about outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.